69 Baker, take two.
Hold on. Second stick. Mark.
Action, Michael. We're moving in this side, not too much movement, right?
In defining the look of a movie, you have to really kind of get it in first and foremost. Whether it's myself, whether it is Richard Dean, whether it's Howard Atherton, Mel Bourne, or what have you. I mean, everyone has their piece of the puzzle that they have to fit into this overall puzzle, which is Adrian's vision.
It's very much to Adrian's vision and to his taste to allow things to, the look of things anyway, to arrive at a very natural, raw level.
Adrian's sort of different from a lot of directors in that he tends to appear more chaotic. He seems to be more spontaneous with what he does. He'll obviously have a very good idea within himself what he would like. He's never totally sure what he's going to do on the day.
To me, the director is the boss. And you give him the stuff that's going to make him feel comfortable. And give him freedom for shooting anything he wants to shoot.
What happens in the process of collaboration is he's the leader, he's the chief. Adrian expresses what he wants. But what he wanted in this movie with Michael Douglas, Glenn Close, and at the time that we first started the process of pre-production, Anne Archer wasn't cast yet. But what he wanted for Michael Douglas was for Michael Douglas to look and appear to be a regular guy in New York. He didn't want to see Michael Douglas, a movie star or an actor. Adrian is very much of this school. Don't allow me to see the movie star public image in the characters. So he didn't want to see Michael Douglas as Michael Douglas. He didn't want to see Glenn Close as Glenn Close, and clearly this was a new role for her. I remember seeing her with Michael. She came in to read, and they put her on tape, and I remember seeing it, and you saw a woman that was Alex Forrest, and she became this woman, and the drive and the intensity that she played it just on a tape was extraordinary.
Go ahead, hit me. Hit me, you'd like that, wouldn't you? You can't fuck me, so why don't you hit me?
You're the saddest lady I ever seen in my life.
Don't hit me!
You're a sick little girl, pal.
Why?
Sick girl.
Why? Because I won't let you treat me like some whore you can just bang! Just bang a couple of times, then dump in the trash can.
The movie that was out when Glenn Close came into Fatal Attraction that she was in was Jagged Edge. And Adrian ran those tapes over and over and over again from Jagged Edge and said, I don't want her to look like that. He said, well, what is it that we can do to make her look like a regular person who is sexy, appealing, has an edge? We knew that we needed to dress Glenn in a way and push her to be most adventurous with herself. And it was my job, Richard's job, to really kind of push some buttons that were never pushed before.
With designing the look for Alex Forrest in a kind of unexpected way, because to this point, Glenn had been perceived as kind of an earth mother, a really wholesome, open, direct, almost a kind of New England personality. I mean, the performance that she did in the little video test that I saw, she had already made a lot of decisions, or was in the process of making a lot of decisions. It was clear. And in my mind's eye, the only thing I could think of to contribute to that was essentially to eliminate the directness of her gaze. And the very first thing I think I said to Adrian was, in principle, I hope you don't ever have to photograph her straight on. I'd always like to have the feeling of seeing her slightly three-quarter. Whether or not that was, in fact, you would see her in a three-quarter position was not to the point. The point was that there'd be a piece of hair or some element that would always throw the face off.
I've always been very, very bad at doing my hair. I just have no patience with it. That's why I wear it short. The low maintenance, I can't do it. But I had this long hair, and I didn't know how to wear it to go to this test. And I just trying up or back, and then I said, oh, you know, just let it go wild. And so that's how I, you know, arrived at the test, and it ended up basically the kind of look that Adrian wanted.
But we started out with a kind of a relatively finished look that could break down, lots of potential for breaking down. Because Alec Forrest's business look was, you know, that of a professional woman who wears cosmetics. So as she proceeded down this path of revealing more and more about herself, really, those things broke down. So the black eyeliner that was smeared and dribbling down as a character starts to kind of degenerate mentally, it ended up being red. We started switching to reds, and we replaced cosmetic with rawness, with elements of rawness. So she ended up using, I mean, the makeup was really not very flattering.
Baby, oh. It's okay.
Sorry if I upset you.
It's okay. It's okay, really. All right, it's okay. Hands are open. Oh, Jesus Christ! No, come here.
First of all, you have to approach scenes with blood and blood effects. We had the Alex slashed her wrists at one point, and in the original ending of the film, slashed her own throat. It's really a beautiful scene, actually, very picturesque, and Madame Butterfly is playing. In order to shoot this, I had to understand exactly what it was Adrian wanted to see, and we were in the thick of filming, which means working many hours a day. And with such a small cast, the actors were used all the time. And we found, in kind of a panic, that we were running out of time to have an appliance made for Glenn's neck. So finally, just to have something prepared as the day approached, we put together kind of a vaudeville gag, which was a knife that had a bite taken out of it. And as we pressed the bite against Glenn's neck, it looked like she was cutting her throat, so she just had to drag it around. We loaded her under her clothing with tubing attached to her arm and out through her hand and onto the handle of the knife, so that as she pulled it around, we could pump blood and make this absolutely ghastly effect. But it was kind of funny because it wasn't exactly high tech.
Working in New York, I think, I would say East Coast work ethic would be a combination of locations and studio work, much more than in LA.
Well, I think one of the nice things about shooting on location is, A, you can look out the windows, or if something is happening outside, you can run down to shoot that. You know what I'm saying? You have more being offered in a way.
The production was, for the first 2 weeks, it was wonderful. And we even shot in the apartment that Adrian used in 9.5 weeks, though you would never know it, as the apartment that Michael and Ann lived in. And we did in 5 days what Adrian said was twice as much work as he did in 3 weeks when he was shooting 9.5 weeks. And I thought, oh, we smart, do we know how to do? And of course, like every picture, you fall into a mud hole someplace. And ours was the loft downtown. I thought we were going to be shooting until I was older.
The killer set for Fatal was Glenn's apartment. We looked at over 300 lofts. The one we chose had 8-foot ceilings, was ridden with vermin, was in a kind of a noisy neighborhood, and I ripped every wall out of the place so that we had wild walls, because it was constricted.
One thing I would say was that within this apartment that wasn't very big. When we were working, say, in the bathroom, we built a bathroom within it so that you could move the bath around, you could move the toilet around. So within this real apartment, we did have elements of the studio.
The separation between the bathroom and her bedroom area of the loft.
We put up stuff, partitions, like glass. I always like shooting through glass. It's always nice. It adds a layer, you know, if you're... So we added stuff within this existing apartment.
We used for the exterior of her specific apartment, we had 3 other locations. A hallway for stairs, another place for the elevator, and another for the exterior. But all within the neighborhood. The way it was shot and cut, it was, you know, fairly seamless.
The environment of the sets quite often dictated how we would shoot it. They were all locations. The only sets on the film were the new end sequence, but everything was shot in a New York apartment, and some of the areas were very, very confined. So the elements of stacking things up with a long lens just worked better because you had crew just out of shot, or lights, or some piece of equipment that you couldn't show. And if you had a wide-angle lens on, you just couldn't be there. So that sort of dictated a style. And I think it works in the end because with the long lens, you're more selective with your focus. You can show what you want and hide what you don't want more easily.
Do what they had their milk. That's good. Yes. Hi, darling. Darling, this is Alex. I'm sorry, I've forgotten your last name.
Alex Forrest.
Alex Forrest. This is my husband, Dan. Hi.
The apartment obviously dictated very much the way we shot. It was very, very small. It was the same apartment they'd shot 9.5 weeks in. And there were lots of times where you had to take it in turns. Like the electricians came in and set some lights, then the grip came in and set some, and everyone had to go out while other departments would come in. The set dressers would come in and dress a bit of set. And then you'd call Adrian in to come and check, and then he'd have to go out while you did the alterations again. Especially that very, very long corridor which ran, it was like almost 2 separate apartments either side of the building, and this very, very, very long, narrow corridor. And people used to have to climb over each other to get backwards and forwards down it. So that set the feel, the claustrophobic feel of the apartment. Whereas in the house, it was a much easier thing. The lights were on the ground, outside, coming through the windows. It allowed more movement within the house because the lights could be outside. There was more space inside the house to move. So it allowed a more mobile camera. The scene with Glenn Close sitting flicking the light on and off was originally going to be a shot of Glenn Close sitting at the opera on her own with an empty seat beside her. And Adrian desperately wanted that scene. And we were going to stage the opera, full audience, and it was going to be a very expensive big number. And Stanley kept leaving this till the end of the movie. He said, you know, we're not going to do that yet. You might not get that. If you don't finish early tonight, you might not get that scene. So finally we shot that in a lunchtime, just coming up to lunch. And Adrian said, where can we shoot this? Where can we shoot this? And they were just going to have sitting at home listening to this music on her own. And I found a quick little spot we could shoot. And I said, she can switch the light on or off if you want. So that's where the light going on and off came from. And I think in the end it's a more powerful scene because of it. It shows her much more isolated and not demented, but very tormented.
When the question of doing the new ending came to pass, it took about a month to actually decide that they were absolutely going to do a new ending.
When we went back to reshoot the ending, several months after the original ending had finished, we'd all gone off and done other projects and come back. We found that there were a number of really kind of serious concerns for me, particularly in the sense of makeup. I mean, we knew which clothes they were wearing when we last saw them, but partially because of this decision not to use much makeup and not to use a typical foundation and not to eliminate features or other materials that we could disguise changes with, I found myself confronted with people who were 8 months or whatever the number of months, that many months different.
We had to do additions to the costumes that already existed, knowing that it was going to be a pretty brutal scene. What happens is that you have to have duplicates, but in this case, because there was blood, water, and so on involved, you have to have more than just duplicates. You have to have like times 8 or a dozen.
Because essentially, what had to happen is the original ending was cut at a certain point, and from that point on, which could be minutes later in the script, the story continued.
And they finally got it together and figured out this whole thing. And I said, now, wait a minute. We don't have the house that we used. The geography doesn't match what you want to do. What are you talking about? I said, there's no bathroom.
It was the only set we had. The bathroom was built as a set on a stage. We had I think it was a 5-foot deep bath, specially made to do the drowning shots in.
I built a steel tank that was 5 feet high, that was really, you know, could take all this water and stuff. And on top of it, it was open on top. I took 2 other matching bathtubs and cut the front of one and the back of the other off, put them together to make an enormous tub so that we would have more room for shooting. And we put the DP in the steel tank below. The whole bottom was cut out, of course. That's how that thing was done. I just feel that if you spell stuff out for an audience so they don't have to, so that they feel that this is what they know, then things work.
I think I was surprised by the success of the film. When you're working on something, when you're very close to something, all you see is mistakes you've made, opportunities you've missed. You tend not to see it as a finished product, a polished product. And it's only now, I don't know how many years ago it is, but this far away from it, and I can sit and enjoy it as a film now. I watched it the other night and I thought, well, this is not a bad film.
The feeling for the movie is so good, and my participation in it and Ellen Moroznik's participation in it, the stuff all kind of worked together so well.
What we witnessed between Glenn and Michael and Anne and all of us that participated, myself, Richard, Melbourne, Howard, Adrian, of course, that a movie evolved, that the script was good. It was there on the page, but we were able to, with great synchronicity, elevate those words to what a movie is.